Welcome to this Museum Accreditation webinar. My name is Jennie Pitceathly, and I'm the Accreditation Advisor for the Northwest. This webinar covers sections 7 through 9, museum users and their experiences within the standard. This webinar will give you an overview of the 3 user sections within the Museum Accreditation Standard. The term users is used throughout accreditation to mean visitors, audiences, customers, and I'll use those terms interchangeably. The presentation is also interspersed with exercises to help you think about what accreditation means in relation to your museum. When we reach the exercises, it might be useful for you to pause the webinar and to work through or discuss those exercises with your colleagues and then resume. It might also help you to have the Accreditation Guidance documents to hand. The document is available on the Arts Council England website on the accreditation pages. You can use the guidance to help check any terminology that you might not understand through the webinar. As with other sections within the standard, the audiences sections, which are 7 through 9, require a policy document, so that's the access policy in blue, which is underpinned by 4 plans and then a number of practices and procedures around access, visitor information, programming, and marketing. So, users and their experiences. A museum must be accessible to the public. So within section 7, you've got 7.1 having an approved access policy, and 7.2 having an access plan that relates to that policy. Within the access policy, you should cover how you identify the needs of your visitors and provide access to them, the range of interpretation you use throughout your museum, how you provide access to collections, to your buildings, and the information you hold about those collections, use of different languages as appropriate to where your museum is, and how you balance the care and management of collections with access, and crucially, a review date. The access policy should also be approved by your governing body at least every 5 years. So, exercise 1. You can pause the webinar here and just have a discussion with colleagues or make a list of the different kinds of interpretation that you use at your museum. Okay, welcome back. So, following exercise 1, there's a list here of the different kinds of interpretation that you might have at your museum or that you might have observed in other museums. So written interpretations, so these will be gallery panels or object labels that are on the walls, guided and audio tours, maybe costumed interpretation, film, themed trails, maps, family activities, storytelling sessions, handling collections, interactives, and digital screens. So moving on to your access plan. The plan should include priorities for action based on access policy and recommendations from an access assessment. Now, an access assessment might include an audit of the physical building or working with a focus group or a support agency or access specialist to help you better understand what the access is at your museum and what some of the barriers are that might need to change. A facilities checklist, and a review of the interpretation and collection use. Your plan should also include procedures for public access, for research, professional advice, training within your workforce, public access provision, access to your buildings, collections, and the information you hold about your collections, and how this is continually being improved, and whether you have had an access assessment in the last 5 years, and crucially, areas covered within the plan, and then you should also have a review date. So any policy or plan within accreditation, you should always have them on a cycle where they're reviewed as appropriate, but every kind of 5 years as a minimum. Okay, moving on to section 8. Users and their experiences, understand and develop your audiences. So 8.1 is you need to understand who your visitors are and who's not coming to your museum. To use information to assess your users' needs, so understanding what your visitors' needs are, and having a plan to develop the range of users or the range of visitors that come to your museum. Understanding your users and non-users. So why is it important to know who comes to the museum and who doesn't? It's useful for reporting. It's useful so that you can create programs that are appropriate to and respond to local needs or your visitors' needs. It's useful for advocacy, to funding and to governing bodies. It will help you in the long term attract more visitors. And also staff satisfaction, so that staff are working to understand what their users want, and then they're delivering a service that then attracts more visitors. Exercise 2. So again, it will be useful if you pause the webinar here and have a discussion with your colleagues or list the information about your visitors that you currently collect. Okay, welcome back. So, what do you currently collect about your visitors? It's useful to collect numbers through the door so that you know what your totals are. The numbers of phone or email inquiries that you might receive, comment cards, visitor books, exit surveys, the number of school visits that you receive, numbers at events, postcodes, so that you know where people are coming from, and any till or shop records that might be cross-referenced with the other information. So what do we need to know about our users or visitors? It's useful to know where they live, their email addresses so that you can continue to communicate with them, whether they're first-time, repeat, or regular visitors. So if they're coming once and they never come back, why is that? Is it maybe because they're from another country, they're visiting internationally, and so you wouldn't expect them to come back? Or if they live closer to you, if they've come once, why haven't they returned? How often they visit? So are they coming once a year, twice a year, every week, once every 5 years? What kind of customer they are, what they attend and what their interests are. So are they only coming to evening events or weekends events because they work during sort of Monday to Friday? Or are they coming, once a month and only on a Tuesday? What they attend, their interests, and why they don't come back. Really important to know if someone's come all the way to your venue, but they don't return, why that is. So how can my museum analyze visitor data? Well, you can benchmark with your partners. If you have a museum down the road that gets really good school visits and your school visits aren't so great, you can talk to them and benchmark and try to build that capacity in. Postcodes mapped on a ward basis, so understanding who is attending and who isn't based on your catchment area. Area profile reports. So many museums in the UK work with an organisation called the Audience Agency. And the Audience Agency collects national data on audiences, including demographics, audience visitor habits, attitudes around how people engage with culture. And area profile reports are available to purchase and will give you a really good picture of the demographic and cultural engagement of people living in your area. Again, there's going to be links to the Audience Agency website at the end of this presentation. Segmentation is also, it's a really common marketing tool for all kinds of different organizations, not just cultural ones. It helps you to target your marketing to your products and services. So most organizations will use market or audience segmentation to understand their customers, existing and potential, by geography, demographic, gender behavior, age, lifestyle, income level, etc. Again, the audience agency uses a framework called audience spectrum that many cultural organizations use to inform audience development planning. Audience spectrum segments people who engage with culture, from people who are very highly engaged with anything from theatre to music to museums and galleries, to those who are least likely to engage with culture. And this segmentation can be mapped by postcode. Again, the links at the end of the presentation will give you the pages to audience spectrum on the audience agency website. And finally, the audience agency's Audience Finder. This is a free national audience data and development tool that allows cultural organizations to understand, compare, and apply audience insight. Links are at the end of this presentation. So, key principles to good data collection. Really, you've got to, depending on the size and scope of your operations, you've got to make sure that there's a practical element. So the benefits of having the data need to outweigh the difficulties in obtaining it. Relevance, you've got to make sure that you're going to use the data that you're collecting. Quality, it's got to be robust, it's got to be accurate and collected through transparent methods. It's got to be consistent so that you can repeat it. And it's got to be comparable, so you can compare year on year, ask the same questions year on year so you can compare the results. So what is Arts Council England looking for within Section 8? They'll want to see your visitor figures over the last 3 years. They'll want to see that there's clear links to your business planning, so that audience development and audience planning is linked back to your business plan, that you're consulting with users and non-users and that's appropriate to the scale of your operation. They'll want to see that you've got an awareness of the visitors who are attending, how you evaluate and analyze visitor data as appropriate to the size of your organization, the steps that you're taking to broaden the current museum offer in order to grow your audience numbers and diversify the types of people that are visiting, your understanding of why some potential audiences do not attend, and your plans to remove any barriers for participation. And they'll also want to see how you measure success of your participation plans. So, things to consider while audience development planning. The numbers of people engaging with different aspects of your offer. The types of people coming from different audience segments, catchment areas, and profiles. Audience responses, their satisfaction with the service, their willingness to recommend your service to friends and family. Audience behavior, so the frequency that they're attending, dwell time, and the range of engagement. So are they coming just to see temporary exhibitions? Are they also looking at your permanent collection? Are they coming to regular events? Web stats for content engagement online. Again, users and non-users refers to not just physical people that come through the door, but also those that are engaging with your online content. The economic or social impact in the wider community, and revenue from ticket sales, cafe, shop, if you've got one. So exercise 3, this is a longer one, so you might want to pause the webinar here and have a discussion with colleagues about how do you know what you know about your users. So going through these questions one by one and really digging deep into what you think you know about your visitors and what you actually know about your visitors. Okay, welcome back. I hope that was useful. So section 9, users and their experiences, engaging with your users and improving their experience. So 9.1 is about providing stimulating learning and discovering activities, including exhibitions and programs based on your collections, and how you communicate effectively with your visitors and potential visitors through a range of access, marketing, and promotional activity. So basically, this is about what you program and what your sort of annual seasonal program looks like, and then how you're communicating that through your marketing or any promotional activity to your audiences, both existing and potential. So exercise 4, again, you might find it useful to pause the webinar here and to work through these 4 questions. Okay, welcome back. So what is the Arts Council looking for within sections 9.1? They want to see that learning is supported by the museum as appropriate to the size of your collections or the size of your operation. Are learning activities reflected in your core purpose and the collections? How do you consult with users to develop learning resources and reflect learning preferences, so the different ways that people learn? How learning activities are promoted through print and digital media? And what information is made available to facilitate visits? So what is the Arts Council looking for within section 9.2? They'll want to see your opening arrangements. So an accredited museum has to be open for at least a minimum of 20 days per year. Information that's published online and in accessible formats. Published visitor access information. Website content, they want to see that it's up to date. That there are alternative arrangements in place where there are restrictions. So if your museum is closed temporarily or part of it's closed for refurbishment, that there are alternative arrangements so that those collections can be made accessible. That there's a dedicated phone or email address for specific inquiries. That different styles of communication for different potential users is available throughout the museum. And the last one applies to museums that are national or nationally styled, that your name or the name of your organization is appropriate to the size and reflects the quality of facilities against other national or national styled museums. And as I mentioned previously, there is further information and resources that might help you with your application to accreditation, your accreditation return, or some of the planning and policy documents. Thank you, that's the end.